This is Beyond Busy. I'm Graham Allcott. I'm the author of a number of books, including the global bestseller, How to Be a Productivity Ninja, and I'm the founder of Think Productive. We help people to make space for what matters and get more done, and we partner with some of the world's leading companies who share our mission to transform the world of work. Beyond Busy is where I explore the often messy truths and contradictory relationships around topics like work-life balance, happiness and success, and explore with interesting people what makes them tick. In short, this is where we ask the bigger questions about work. My guest today is Jodie Cook. Jodie is an entrepreneur, a powerlifter and a writer. She writes regularly for Forbes and is also the author of a number of different books, including How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids. And we catch Jodie here in quite an interesting spot, having just sold her business, JC Social Media, and reflecting on her experiences of leading her team through the pandemic and then through that sale. We talk about why she's determined not to make plans just yet, how to get mentored by your heroes, and much more. This is Jodie Cook. Welcome back to Beyond Busy, Jodie Cook. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you. I'm great.
So you've had quite a big year, and I thought maybe we'd start with a couple of those big things. So you've released 2 books this year, both to lots of acclaim, which we'll talk about in a minute, and also you've sold your business. So yeah, we're in May right now. How does it feel reflecting on the last few months? It must have been a bit of a whirlwind time.
Yes, it's definitely been a whirlwind time. I think the main thing that summed up the last few months, and definitely since the start of 2021, is just patience, and having to be patient when there's a deal going through, when there's books coming out, when there's exciting things happening, and just always reminding myself not to keep rushing forward to the next step, because there's no point. It means you're always hoping that it's going to be tomorrow or the next week. And I've really worked hard on not doing that. I think I would have gone crazy otherwise.
So should we talk about the books first? Instagram Rules, award-winning, business book award winner in your category last week. So congratulations on that. And then also How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids, which you released with Daniel Priestley. So let's talk about Instagram Rules first. What do you think is most interesting to you about how people are using Instagram right now?
The story of how the book came about is actually quite indicative of how people can use Instagram right now. And that's that Instagram Rules came about from an email in my inbox from a publisher who I didn't know, who said, I've got this book in mind. I've seen some of your writing on Instagram. Do you want to write it? And I was just like, sure. Yeah. And so I think that was my first ever published book with an actual publisher, because all the rest have been self-published. And I think even how the book came about is quite reflective of just how you don't need to ask for permission, and you don't need to just bang down the doors of publishers or anyone who you want to give you a chance. You can just create your own chances. And Instagram itself lets you do that, but just writing and producing and creating means that you can create your own presence, your own brand, your own audience. And then it means that those people that you thought were really, really hard to find and really, really hard to get in front of, like publishers, agents, whoever else, they come looking for you. And I feel like it represents such a huge shift in the whole industry. So I'm really happy that that's the story of how the book came about, and that it's done so well, and that it's won awards, and it's gone down really well, and it's been really helping people.
Nice. And then How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids. It kind of feels like that book is, very much you sort of telling your story and putting a lot of you into it. So tell us about that one.
How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids came about because I sent out a HARO. So HARO stands for Help a Reporter Out. And it's a web-based program, which is really good for journalists who are looking for sources. And I sent a HARO out asking 2 questions. And one question was, how are you raising entrepreneurial kids? And the other question was, how were you raised to be entrepreneurial? And I just wanted to hear some stories. And I thought that I might get, a few back. I thought I might be able to write a blog post or 2. And I got 500.
Wow.
And so I was reading through it. They were just incredible. My inbox just was going crazy that whole day, just full of, it was a big like British and European audience responding. And then I thought, oh, it's died down. And then America woke up and then I got a whole load more responses. But the responses just went into so much detail and were so fascinating. And it was almost like people were having realizations as they were writing. Yeah. It was like, oh, I did this thing. Oh, I did this thing. Oh, that could have meant that. And, you know, when I interviewed you for the Clever Tax podcast, Creating Useful People, and you said, oh, it's like having a kind of therapy session where I'm digging into my childhood and finding out all this stuff and what it means for now. It was like that. It was like people were having therapy sessions of realizing, oh, when that thing happened when I was younger, that's what led to this success I've got now. And they were just brilliant. So I had over 40,000 words of stories. There were lots of themes coming out. I think I started to group them into similar ones. And then I thought, well, this is obviously more than a blog post. So I think it should be a book. And that's when I thought, I want to get a partner in this. And that's when I approached Daniel Priestley, my co-author, because we'd worked together before. I know he's raising 3 kids all under the age of 7. And I thought he would be a really good partner because I don't have kids myself, but I was definitely raised to be entrepreneurial, just maybe by accident. But then I thought it would be really good to have a parent to give the other side of that story. So we put the book into 4 different pillars, which we call the pillars of raising entrepreneurial kids based on the responses. And that they are entrepreneurial mindset, entrepreneurial skills, entrepreneurial opportunities, and the parent mentor. And then we put all the examples in. We wrote about each of the different areas. And then Daniel was actually really cool in that he came with a publisher. So he said, oh yeah, this is great. I'll pitch it to my publisher. And then that one arrived. Nice. So then, we published that through Rethink Press, and that's been amazing as well.
Yeah. And that also, I mean, I can relate to that because you also interviewed me for it, and it got me thinking about how I don't really feel like I wasn't surrounded by entrepreneurs. I didn't really have any experience of being an entrepreneur sort of growing up, but also I had, weird money issues which spurred me on to actually want to get money. I came from a background of not having a lot of money, but also then I accidentally started a window cleaning business, and it was also because I just wanted to put good stuff out into the world, the sort of volunteer editor of a music fanzine and all this kind of stuff. And when you interviewed me for it's interesting how you kind of joined the dots between all these different experiences and how a lot of these childhood experiences really kind of shape you. And it kind of feels like that's something that you've been interested in for a while, right? So with Clever Tykes, a lot of which is about going into schools and giving young people more realistic views of entrepreneurs, feels like that's something that's really important to you. So what was your own childhood like in terms of those entrepreneurial role models and kind of, mentors around entrepreneurship?
I think I was definitely thrown in at the deep end in every opportunity. I feel like my mum and dad just operated on the mantras of what's the worst that could happen, or just, what could possibly go wrong. So small things I remember is that when I was probably like 4 or 5, if I ever had to book a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment, it would be me who made that appointment. No one would make it for me. It was just, right, it's due for your you due for your dentist checkup. You know where the number is. You know what you need to do. You know when you're free. And it would be up to me to just call up, speak to the receptionist and book it in. And it probably wasn't until I grew up that I realised that not everyone does that. But it was just normal. And then another one was that probably from the age of like 6 or 7, if we ever went away on a trip, it was up to me to pack my own suitcase and decide what I was going to take. And the worst that could happen is that I might choose a silly outfit, not be prepared for rain or something like that. But really, it's not that bad. And so that's what I did. And I think there's a lot of different experiences where I was just given something to do and just got on with it. And there was no sense of me kind of overthinking it or complaining or saying, no, it's not fair, I want someone else to do it. It was like, okay, this is what I do. And then I think that level of probably like independence and resourcefulness just being instilled in me from such a young age meant that when I when I turned 16 or 17, I was like, I want to get driving lessons and I want to learn how to drive and I want to buy my own car. I got my first job at 16. I was just very independent and always looking for how I could own my own life. And then that felt like it really naturally led on to starting a business when I was 22, which at the time, none of my friends were doing it. They were just starting on the corporate career ladders and they thought I was mad and they thought it was this huge risk, but I didn't really see it like that. I just saw it as, we know what could go wrong.
I think that's a great way to think about entrepreneurship generally, but particularly for younger people watching this or listening to this. I just think that's the perfect time to start a business. I started my first, proper business when I was, I think, 29 or 30. And, that was because the first part of my career, I was working in charities. I was sort of pursuing a career that I was, again, really passionate about. But I think when you're 22, 23, to be able to start a business at that age, it's like, what is the worst that's going to go wrong? You probably don't have kids to feed, you probably don't have big mortgages and commitments and things like that. It's like, it really is the perfect time, right? It's to start early.
It felt like playing businesses. It didn't really feel like a real, like I'd had jobs before. I'd had jobs in hospitality and kind of little kind of side jobs. And then I'd had a year on a graduate scheme, which was actually in social care. So that was probably the most real job I had. But then when I started on my own, it almost didn't feel real. It almost felt like, because everything was so new and it was going to meetings and even knowing what a meeting was and what to do in a meeting and then signing up clients and then knowing how to, send an invoice or just do all that stuff that business people take for granted. It's like, because there were so many learning opportunities, it just felt like so much fun that I never really thought of it as like, oh, it's this big serious thing that's starting a business. It just felt like a kind of fun experience.
Yeah. Do you feel like, looking back, have there been things that, because you started your business so young, or have there been experiences that you just hadn't had that were a disadvantage? And likewise, were there things that you've not had to unlearn because you started it so early?
I think when I first started out, because the industry I chose was quite new, there weren't very many social media managers around at the time. So this was 2011. Twitter had only been around for like 5 years or something. It's just, stuff was quite new. So I was spending quite a lot of time on the kind of education aspect of it. So it wasn't just, oh, hey, use me. It was, no, this is why you should be on social media. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm convincing people what they should do, of what they should do, of why they should use social media. But imagine if I was selling air conditioning or car insurance or something that you don't need to convince people that they need. And I remember thinking like, oh, I've picked quite a hard route here. It could be, I could have picked something where it's just a no-brainer and someone knows that they have to buy it and then they would choose me. But actually I think that it was the fact that it was a novelty and that it was new and that I was this fresh kind of excitable person who was like, yeah, you're going to change the world. Maybe that worked in my favor even more.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other big thing that's happened this year, which is that you sold that business, JC Social Media. So that happened, what was that, a couple of months ago?
Yeah, I don't know where to begin with that. So I guess at the start of 2020 is probably the best place to begin with it, because selling wasn't really in my head. That wasn't really my plan. And then 2020 was quite a weird year overall for lots of different people.
It was quite an odd year, wasn't it?
Yeah. So during 2020, the business shrank by a lot because we had a lot of clients in hospitality and travel and events. And I remember kind of sitting there being like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And being quite scared, being quite everything's changed. And also being really aware that I didn't want any of the fear that I was feeling to pass on to my team. So I had a team of 16 people. I was so aware that no one does their best work under fear. So rather than sharing that fear, I did two things. I basically kept it all for myself and thought, I can handle this. I'll handle the fear and I'll make sure no one else has to worry at all. And the second thing is I tried to outwork coronavirus. I just thought that's what I'll do. I'll just keep up with it and everything will be fine. And so that worked for us to a certain extent. But I think that's probably the most like burnt out, knackered, whatever that I've ever felt last year, probably around April time. But then over the summer, the whole company just had a complete transformation. It was like the team were just absolutely brilliant. Just everyone kind of pulled together. Everyone did over and above what they needed to. They were so resourceful. We pretty much transformed the company. We did courses. We all went remote. We grew by a lot. And during the whole year of 2020, we replaced all the business that we'd lost at the start of March, and then we grew significantly over and above that. And so round about autumn time, that's when I started to think, this is a team that's really, really capable of a lot, and I think is possibly capable of more than I have the ambition to take it and to take them. And that's when I started thinking, I think this is the right time. We've never been stronger. Our client base has never been stronger. Our team's never been stronger. This would be a really good time to sell. And I think I was quite excited by the thought of it. That's when I started putting the feelers out there. We started working with someone who introduces agencies with other agencies. And I just started meeting different agencies under the premise of, I'm not in a rush. I'm really happy. Everything's good. So if someone wants to prize this agency out of my hands, then they can, but I'm not in a hurry, and I'm definitely not going to be kind of lowballed or have my arm twisted.
You're not desperate to sell in that moment or anything like that.
Yeah. So we got a lot of interest. I had a lot of meetings, a lot of second meetings, lots of companies where it just didn't quite, there was something like the chemistry wasn't quite there, and like it was totally mutual, and they would have known as well. But then there were 2 or 3 where I thought, this is really interesting, and I like them, and I like what they could do and the plans they've got. Then we got some offers. Then it was about thinking who was the best, and then we made the decision of who to go with, and then started down that journey of acquisition.
Yeah, I want to talk about what that means for you in a minute. I just want to rewind slightly. So you talked before about COVID being a really, fearful time, and you wanting to take on that fear. And so I guess my question around that is, how practical is that from, just from the point of view of, surely some of the other members of the team are going to just be fearful. You can't stop their feelings and sort of take that away from them. So was it just about withholding the financial performance from them, or like what were you doing to try and own that fear yourself rather than let that seep in elsewhere?
I think that I wouldn't have let on that I was feeling scared about anything at all. It was all like, no, we've got this. We're going to sort this out. And actually, I did believe that. That wasn't a lie. It was just that I don't think I went into detail about how much stuff had shrunk at the time. And then it was constantly making sure everyone was okay. We actually quizzed people throughout those couple of months quite a lot about how they were getting on working remotely, making sure everyone had everything they needed, even simple stuff like if someone didn't have a desk at home, or we started doing like snack boxes that we sent round, and wanted to make sure that everyone felt like they were getting the support that they needed. And then I'm not sure how else I kind of took the fear, but it was very much like we were focused on the way forward. It wasn't focused on all this bad stuff that would happen. I'm not really someone who I don't really read the news. I try really hard to avoid just stuff that goes on around. And I think that probably helped, because at the time there were so many theories. There was so much like, I don't know, there was herd immunity, and then there was this fearful thing, and then there was all this variant somewhere, and it's like all these little buzzwords that fly around, and you could spend your whole day worrying about what was going on. So I think me not having that in my headspace just meant I could focus on the business. And I think because I've got very inspirational friends running businesses, there were 2 in particular. It was Rob Geraghty, our mutual friend, and also Daniel Priestley, my co-author for How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids. And I saw how quickly they were adapting, and they were just so in their element. And it was almost like they'd been born to go through this pandemic.
Yeah.
And so watching them and watching what they were doing, I was like, yes, we can do this too. It's okay. There's a way through. So being inspired by other people and then being able to tell my team about it and having all these ideas about what we could do, I think moved us away from, it's almost like moving us away from the lizard brain and into the visionary mindset. I think that was my goal with what I was doing with them.
Yeah, away from the lizard brain and into the visionary mindset feels like a good place to be. So let's talk about the sales. So you sold the business. I'm just curious to know, because obviously that business is called JC Social Media. It's like literally got your name on it. It's 10 years of your life. And I'm just curious to know, what does it feel stepping away from it, and what's your relationship with it now?
So I guess it's been bought by a big marketing group who also bought a few other agencies. Is that they're all going to be rolled up into the same name. So the JC name won't be around for too much longer. But also at the time of sale, it wasn't me who was running it. I had a really good team of like a manager, team leaders. So I think I was very much the owner rather than the manager, which meant that there was already that element of separation. And that's one of the reasons why I chose those buyers, because they really got it. They really understood. We had a couple of offers from companies who wanted me to kind of do like a 2 or 3 year earn out, and it just never would have worked because that wasn't the setup that we had. But I really loved that the people who acquired us they just got it. They knew who I was to the company. And so I've still got a shareholding in the group. I'm very much a kind of ambassador of the brand. If anyone, I still get people. I think I'll probably be getting referrals for social media work until I'm 80, and I'm still very happy to pass them over. And I know they'll be looked after by that team. But in terms of day to day, I'm just not required. But then I wasn't required anyway, so it's not. I guess it's not changed life too much. But at the same time, what it has changed is that before I could have always been tapped on the shoulder for something. If something really, if someone really needed me, I would have got a phone call before. Whereas now that's not the case. And that's probably the biggest change. Just that part of your brain that was taken with something that could maybe happen is not there anymore. And that's probably the biggest difference to my like happiness and mindset and everything else. I'm really enjoying that part of it.
Yeah. So in the days after the sale went through, were you still getting up really early and doing your training and everything else? Or like, did you have a little period of just going to flop down on, and have a lie in and be on the sofa all morning kind of thing?
I'm not really a kind of flop down and have a lie in kind of person.
No, it doesn't seem like you, to be honest.
No. Well, so last week, Ben and I went on a kind of celebration trip where we went for a spa week, and we went to a nice hotel and went on nice walks, and still trained, of course, but just had like a very definite, like, we are celebrating this, which was really nice. Yeah, and we've only just been able to, because it's only just been open. In the weeks after, I think it took a little while to sink in, and maybe it still hasn't fully, but it was just, I think I definitely took stuff slower, and I am probably still taking stuff slower. And I'm trying really hard not to take in any pressure to choose what's next. And actually, LinkedIn was funny the other day, because I logged into LinkedIn and I got a pop-up to say, Jodie, you really should choose you really should fill out your current experience. And I was like, leave me alone. Not yet. So yeah, I'm just very much enjoying taking time to just see.
Congratulations on getting to that point. And I wonder if one of the things that has helped get you there is your New Year mantras. So you've talked to me about this before. What I want you to do is just explain the concept of your New Year mantras, and also, most importantly, what was the New Year's mantra for this year?
The concept of a New Year mantra is that you almost decide what kind of year you're going to have, and then you choose a mantra that really resonates with you, that you're going to just have at the forefront of your mind throughout the year. And it has to be a mantra that really does mean something to you. It's not about some fluffy quote on Instagram that looks good but doesn't really like speak to you. Yeah. It's almost like if you go through enough, you will find one and you will think, yes, that is it. That is how I want my year to be defined. So in 2019, mine was We Are What We Repeatedly Do, because that was all about getting a writing practice and finishing books and becoming like an author and just getting, like you can say you're a writer and then you don't really write. You kind of, you're the noun without doing the verb. I wanted to make sure I was about the verb. And so that was the mantra for that year.
I have a post-it note actually on just above my desk over there, which just says writers ... write.
Yes.
It's just 2 words, but it's such a good mantra, because I think there's one of my favorite things is that Peter Cook quote where it's like someone goes up to Peter Cook at a party and he says, what do you do? And this guy says to Peter Cook, I'm writing a novel. And he says, oh, really? I'm not writing a novel either.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's so many people who talk the talk and don't actually get round to doing the books, right?
Yeah. So that was 19. That was 19, and then 2020 was I am the hero of my own life, and that is it's the name of a guided journal by a writer called Brianna Wiest, and I just really like that phrase because I think it reminds you to put yourself at the center of things in a really healthy way and in a way that just makes sure that you're choosing what you do and you are not being, I don't know, a victim. You're not a victim of any circumstance. And actually that worked really well because guess what happened in March 2020? So having I am the hero of my own life at the forefront of my mind for that whole year, I think made such a difference. And then for 2021, it was a phrase that Jessica Ward, actually, who's a really good friend. She's the principal of Elmhurst Dance School, and she was also on the podcast, on the Clever Tax podcast. Her mantra when she was younger that her parents said to her was, jump and the net will appear. And I just love it. And so that was it for 2021, because at that point we knew we were selling. We were kind of very close with signing heads of terms. And I was like, I don't know what the future's going to hold, but I know that it will have fun stuff. I just need to trust that there is a net somewhere.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like I took a sabbatical in 2017, and not with particularly the idea of starting something new or doing anything different, but just taking that time to just be out of my business and just out of work for the first time since I was about 13 or something. I used to have a 6-day-a-week paper round when I was 13. And so it's the first time that I've really had no structure at all. And I found it really tough to avoid just the idea of avoiding what are the lessons of this sabbatical period, or like what are the opportunities and what am I going to do? Like to actually just sit and be and not sort of feel that pressure to always be doing stuff or making something out of it or whatever. I've actually found really tough for most of that year, but it sounds like you're just enjoying that sort of time period to just be present and not be pressured.
I think so. I think there's always, maybe as humans, we always feel the need to have that identity and to know like, what are we? And someone says, it's the first question you get asked at parties and when you meet people, oh, what do you do for work? Or what do you do? And a few times recently in the gym, it's happened where I've met new people there and they've said, oh, what do you do for work? And I've been like, I don't really know how to answer that right now.
Do you just say I've retired?
I don't say I've retired. I have said I'm somewhere in between retirement and unemployment. But it depends. I guess it depends who's asking. And if you don't feel if you don't want to start a massive conversation about it because you maybe are not totally convinced about it in your own head, then it makes sense to ask it, to kind of answer in a more simple way and maybe say, I don't know, I'm a writer or I'm a powerlifter.
One of the things that you're still doing, even though you've sold the business, is you're still working and writing for Forbes. So let's talk about. I want to talk about this one particular bit you wrote for Forbes, which is what successful people don't care about. Just really resonated with these things. So, and this is a thing that I love about you, is that you quite often question some of those kind of status quo, you know, kind of prevailing wisdom sort of things. So what successful people don't care about, and the first one is what others think. Tell me about that.
Probably to give context to the Forbes stuff as well. The kind of audience and the people who I write for are very much entrepreneur because I just love entrepreneurs. I just love talking to them.
Yeah.
I love like digging into why they are who and how they are. But it's a lot about entrepreneurs who want to run a business without it running them, and they do want to question. They do suspect that there is this other way, and I think the thing that I feel like I move away from is that when I first started out in my own business and I started going to networking events, I would meet a lot of people who were running their own businesses who'd been doing it for a very long time, like 40 years or something.
Yeah.
And they almost had all this potential of having this really exciting time and this really exciting life and this stuff that just all these new opportunities and these new things. But what they actually did is they had created themselves a job, not created themselves a business.
They owned a job. Yeah.
They owned a job with the worst boss ever because it was themselves. They also had the same year every year. Every year was just the same year. It wasn't a different year. And I remember looking at that as a concept and thinking that's not for me. So the writing is very much for people who want to do it a bit differently and want to reach the things that they maybe never thought they would far earlier, because I think that you can do that. And I don't think a whole career needs to take 45 years. You could have 5 different careers and each one could be 10 years each, and you could be something completely different within each one. So that article, what successful people do not care about. And the first thing is what other people think. The thinking behind that point, and you are going to have to remind me of the other things that successful people don't care about. I think that what other people think is everyone has got an opinion of what you should be doing or what you could be doing. And it all comes from their own references, and it all comes from the place that you the place that you fill inside their heads, and that might be completely wrong. So you almost have to detach yourself from that version of you that exists in someone else's head and be so clear on who you actually are and the best version of you. And that probably isn't how anyone else knows you. It's probably just very different. And I think it's really difficult, unless you really know yourself, to hear, oh, you should do that, or you could do that, or, oh, how about you try this, and go, actually, no, I'm good. I'm going to do it this way instead. I think you have to really know yourself. So that's what that first one is about.
And just digging into that a little bit more, do you feel like there's sort of a version of you in other people's heads that's different to how you see yourself? And if so, what's the different bit?
I think that there's a quote from something like Alice in Wonderland, and someone asks Alice about something that she did yesterday, and she said, "There's no use asking me about yesterday because I was a different person then." And everyone changes so much all the time that I feel like sometimes you let go of people, and sometimes that's like they know a former version of you, and that's not you anymore. Whereas there are some relationships that you know will last forever and that you really nurture and that you really keep up with, and that's the version of you that kind of changes along with what someone else knows about you as well.
Yeah, nice. Although as you're saying that, I was also thinking there's a lot of stuff with you that's very consistent over a long period of time, right? Just in terms of like your energy and positivity and the passion for entrepreneurialism, like all those things are really constant too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one.
Successful people don't care about grandiose plans. I really like this one.
I have been the judge for a lot of different awards, and when you read applications, sometimes you have to almost strike through everything that hasn't happened yet. And so you have to be able to see past, we're going to do this, or we have plans to do this, or our projections are to do this. And it's not that you're discrediting anyone else's like really exciting plans of their future. It's just that it has not happened yet. And what we want to focus on right now for you winning this award is what has happened. So I find myself like mentally doing it when I'm reading through them. And I think that it's really easy to get lost in potential, and in, if someone said, oh, you could get this million pound valuation, and you could get this funding, and you could win this award, and you could do all this stuff, but it's like, but what have you actually done? And I think that always bringing yourself back to what can I achieve right now, or what can I focus on right now, I think it helps you stay in the present, and it also helps you focus on what you put in rather than what you may or may not get out of it in the future.
Yeah. Did you tell me once that you don't ever share plans with people before they've happened? Did you tell me that?
I'm like, my friends tell me off for doing this. Like, yeah. Well, it happened, I guess it happened with our kind of mastermind group that we have, where all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, by the way, I've sold my business, because I didn't necessarily say anything to anyone before that. But
Yeah,
I think it's because
right.
I'm so aware that I never want to be someone who is kind of all about the big hype that never comes to fruition. I like
Yeah.
being able to say this has happened. And sometimes if I'm still working something out in my head, or even in the business case, like it could have fallen through at any point. And I
Yeah.
maybe if it did fall through, maybe I wouldn't want to talk about it. So I guess I think that while I'm figuring stuff out in my head, I really try and keep it in my head and work through it and then share after that. So yeah, I'm really bad at that. I don't think I've got it right. I think I'm probably a bit too private with everyone.
Yeah, because I guess the alternative of that is that if the sale did fall through and you needed support from people, I mean, I guess you could just then give everybody the whole backstory at the same time. But if you were going to reach out to support and they already knew what was going on, then you'd get to the support quicker, wouldn't you? I suppose, but then you could very easily just explain at the time, hey, I've been trying to sell this business, it's fallen through, I want some advice, and go from there.
Yeah, and the needing support is interesting because sometimes you don't need support. Sometimes you just like, it's that thing that happened, it's not a big deal. And if, like when we speak, we might only have an hour every couple of weeks or month or so. I'm like, do I want to waste 20 minutes of like my precious time with Graham talking about that thing that I may or may not be sad about? And if that's a no, then fine, let's talk about something else. But then it doesn't matter. And I think that you can almost fabricate that you need support when actually you're fine and you can just move on.
Yeah. And I think that's a real defining feature of you as well, isn't it? Just the sense of autonomy and agency that you have so strongly that you don't really need anybody to do what you want to do, and you just have an innate confidence in your own ability to do stuff. Is that fair to say?
I think I just get on with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where does that come from?
I think it comes from being thrown into the deep end. I think it comes from just get
packing
on
your
with
own
it.
suitcase.
Packing my own suitcase. See, it's everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that needs to be there needs to be a book called Packing Your Own Suitcase or something along those lines. It's such a lovely analogy. And also I want to interview your parents and work out how deliberate that was, or if it was like, I'm assuming it didn't come about because they just couldn't be bothered to pack your suitcase. I'm sure there was a lot of thought behind it, right? So like, I just think it's a really fascinating thing.
I think with my mom, it was a lot because she wasn't very independent when she was younger. I think she wanted to do more for herself than she was able to. In a really nice way. Like she definitely would say she had a really nice upbringing, but I think she was sometimes like, no, I can do this, I can do it. And maybe wasn't given the free rein. So she made a very conscious choice that me and my little sister would have all the free rein possible.
And then I'll just summarize these last three things from the Forbes thing. So what successful people don't care about: minor actions, being right, and pleasing everyone. I just think those are such powerful things and really important things to think about when you're an entrepreneur. So like that whole thing about being right, maybe there's a nice thing to share here, is that you always message me if you find me spending time correcting people who are wrong on the internet. Right. Yeah. And I love you for that. It's a really important role that you play in my life.
Through gritted teeth.
Well, seriously, I know I shouldn't be doing it. But we met up once. Maybe it was when we met in Wagamama's and you were like, I'm loving your Twitter right now. And I was like, oh, thank you. And then you went, it's so angry. I was like, oh God, I don't think that's what I should be. And I kind of knew that I needed to leave Twitter before that, but it was probably, I think I was thinking about it that day, wasn't I? And then we had that conversation and I was like, yeah, Jodie, I'm leaving it right now. And so I left Twitter basically because of you.
Yeah, I think being right does not matter. I think what's so much more important and what's so much harder to get right is knowing when to let it go and being able to let it go and being able to just be like, and just go, fine, someone else can deal with that. That's not my battle. Because you can, if you want to pick a fight with someone on the internet, you could do it every single minute of every day. But what would your energy look like after you'd done that? It would be horrendous. And we talk quite a lot actually about Twitter, because I don't think the solution to anything is boom and bust. I think there are ways of having a healthy relationship with social media. And perhaps the reason why I think that is because I ran a social media agency for so long that I had to find that healthy relationship with social media, because otherwise I wouldn't have had a company. So there's a way of taking the best bits without the worst bits. I'm sure of it. And one day I will convince you of that, and we'll find an amazing balance where you can just be happy online.
Yeah, that's the bit where we disagree, because I find that particularly the things that push my buttons, which are usually around, injustices and, politics and stuff like that, I know that the platforms they're trying to get me to see more of that stuff, right? So it's just like I just care about it too much to have a healthy relationship with those things that are really angering me, and where the attention economy of Twitter is such that those things are going to be pushed to me more and more the more I engage with them. So like, it's just, yeah, you can go cold turkey on it, but then the algorithm figures you out again after a period of time. That's kind of how I think about it. What do I need to do differently?
I think you need to believe that you can beat it. I think you need to believe that you are better that you can tame that beast. I think there are so many opportunities that I can think of that I would not have had without social media. But I know at the same time, if I'm going to scroll Twitter or scroll Instagram, at some point I'm going to feel a bit rubbish about my own life, because you just do, because you've got everyone sharing all their amazing milestones. Even if you only follow, say if you follow 300 people and everyone posts something once a year, you've got something every single day that someone is doing that you think's amazing, and you compare that life to you compare their edited show reel to your behind the scenes, and of course you're going to feel low energy and you're going to feel rubbish. But if you go cold turkey, you miss out on all the good stuff. So there has to be a balance.
Yeah, I'm happy in my little Instagram world right now. I'm following loads of baseball and jazz, obviously, but also loads of people who are talking about kindness in business and stuff that I really care about. And yeah, I feel like that's my nice little escapist place, and it doesn't have there's so much of the politics anyway. I do follow a few political people and all that sort of thing, but there you go. I want to talk about your thing of imaginary mentors. So this was a really fun conversation we had. So you have a whole range of all the best business thinker minds in the world all mentoring you, and it's free. It's really cool. Tell me how you do that.
So I'm going to sound like such a loser right now, and I don't care, because what we will assume is that this is for the greater good of, if anyone else wants to do this, you totally can. You don't need to apply anywhere. You don't need to subscribe. You don't need to part with any cash. You too can have all the best business brains in the world in your head for free. And what I think this involves is reading books, listening to podcasts, getting to know the people whose values align with yours. And you can probably think of a few off the top of your head right now, and feel like you get to know them and their voice so much that in the future you can almost ask questions of them in your head and you will have the answer. And it's crazy how much it can actually work. And these are questions that if I called up Tim Ferriss, I can't call up Tim Ferriss, I don't physically have his phone number, but if I try to email Tim Ferriss and say, hey, what should I do about this book I'm releasing? I'm not going to get an answer to that because I don't know him. But if in my head I was like, hey, what should I do about this thing? I can probably work out what he's going to say, because I've got this like collection of how he thinks and the advice he gives in my head. I really would love anyone listening to this podcast who thinks that they could give that a go, to give that a go and to let me know how they get on, because I think they'll come to a really good answer just by channeling people. Because that's what, like meditation a lot of the time is channeling a higher power. Like a lot of religion is channeling a higher power. Like there's lots of things that practice that, and I think
I'm doing meditation wrong in that case.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's why. Well, you know what? In the I was reading about the New Zealand rugby team, and the haka, when they perform the haka, they kind of bang on the floor and they like do their chants, and that is to call upon the ancestors, the Maori ancestors, and their wisdom and their courage, and kind of channel that through them. So it's done in lots of cultures, in lots of different examples, and I believe that you can do it with business mentors.
So is Tim Ferriss the main one? Like who are the other ones that you're trying to wire?
I think there's loads. It's just that it's people where I just really admire what they're doing, and there's certain aspects of them where I just think, I want to be more them. I think when I was younger, I worked out that I wanted to be more confident. And there was a girl in my class at primary school who was just so confident, and she would sing all the time and she would dance all the time. And I just thought, like, how do I do this? So I always used to just pretend to be her. And it didn't take over like my whole life, but just in certain situations, if you know, like Beyonce has Sasha Fierce, and that's her character, and she'll go on stage and she is Sasha Fierce. If I had to, I don't know, stand up in class, or if I had to perform in the school play or something, I was this girl in my class. And sooner or later, I didn't need to be her, because I just worked out how to get this confidence for myself.
Yeah. Love it. Jodie Cook becomes Sasha Fierce.
Yeah, I'll try that one.
We're on Beyond Busy, and you actually said to me before we hit record, I want to talk about productivity. And I'm like, yeah, you don't have to convince me that that's a good idea. So you've been doing a few particularly geeky productivity hack type of things over the last few months. So what have you been finding has worked for you around productivity?
I first thought about this when lockdown first happened, and I think I read a stat somewhere about the number of people who'd subscribed to Disney Plus and the number of Netflix subscriptions that had gone way up. And I thought, oh no, that's not going to be me. Because actually, no, I don't have a TV, I don't have Netflix, I don't have any of that kind of stuff. But I just found myself suddenly with all this extra time, as everyone else had. And I think because I try and be really self-aware.
We should preface that as everyone else without kids.
Yeah. And because I try and be really self-aware, I'm so aware that anything can turn into a habit. And I didn't want to start bad habits. So I made myself, this is really geeky, I made myself a 30-day challenge. And there's a spreadsheet. It's got boxes that I colour in, and it's got like between 6 and 10 things that it's like you have to do these things every single day. And it kind of turned into a little game. And at the time, it was like go for a walk. It was do a daily calm, and it was the Wim Hof method every morning, and it was write at least this many words, and speak to an inspiring person was one of them, because I was going crazy from not talking to anyone or meeting anyone.
That's cool. Yeah.
That I had that. Yeah, you were one of those, actually. I just didn't tell you that I checked a little box when we spoke. But tick. But yeah, so there were between 6 and 10, and that was the whole of April 2020. And now I repeat it every single month to make sure that I'm just sticking to good habits. And I find that sometimes at the start of lockdown, it was very much like fanny around all day and then do all 10 at the end of the day, cram them all in before you go to bed. But then it started to be like, no, actually, I'm going to start my day off with these good things. And then sooner or later, it just became natural. And then sooner or later, they became habits. And now I do it all the time.
So the Wim Hof method. So there's a podcast that you did with Wim Hof, and I've actually started doing his cold shower thing.
Nice.
At your instigation. I'd seen him before, but it was when we were talking about it. So I'm up to doing 30-second cold showers every day. And Jodie, this is like, I can't tell you how unbelievable that sentence is to me, because I live in Brighton, and I've never swum in the sea in Brighton because it's too cold. I'm a wimp when it comes to this sort of stuff. And it's been really interesting. And I read a lot of the science around it, where it has a lot of really beneficial effects to your nervous system and your metabolism, and like all these things are really benefited by this idea of just doing 30-second cold shower first thing in the morning. But what's also interesting is the way you notice your brain's reaction to, like, so some mornings it's like, cool, 30 seconds, let's go. And it's just matter of fact. And then other days you're like, oh, I really don't want to do this today. And you have this whole like inner battle around it. And I just find it's a really interesting sort of window into where your level of willpower and self-discipline is at on a particular day as well. So how did you get into the Wim Hof stuff? And yeah, what's been your experience of it?
I read his book, The Wim Hof Method. And then that's when I sent him a message and said, hey, I'd love to interview you for Forbes. And then he got back and said, yeah, that's great. And then we had a Zoom call. He was absolutely crazy in the best possible way. He's such a great guy. He's just so genuine. And yeah, I feel like I'm rooting for him. I feel like I really want him to do well. And he's been doing what he does for so long. He's been trying to convince people for so long. And now it's just snowballing. It's huge. And so many people are doing it now. So, I think that the cold, especially cold showers, cold baths, ice baths, it's all a metaphor for just resilience and handling more than you think you can. Because especially with a cold shower, and you might have found this, the hardest bit of the whole experience is the 5 seconds before, when you know what's going to happen and you know it's going to be horrible. And then you flip that switch to cold and then it hits you and then you kind of go, and it takes your breath away for a second and then you are absolutely fine. And then actually everything's better from there because you get out the shower and you're not cold because you haven't just gone from hot to cold. You've just gone from cold to normal. And once you know that you can handle that, you can kind of handle anything. It's almost like, yeah, come at me. What else can happen today? Well, I've already done that. So there can't really be anything else that scares me. So I really like it as a way of just building resilience and putting yourself in forced and comfortable situations all the time, because I really like the idea of your comfort zone getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Is there anything new on your sort of checkbox list, intentions of things that you want to do over the next few months? So you've got the, talking to an inspirational person every day, and you've got all these other things that you're ticking off. Is there anything new that you're thinking of adding to that daily practice?
One of the ones I've kept from the very start is reading every day. But more recently, I've changed it to kind of reading or like listening to a podcast, because I've started doing more cardio. And maybe that's having more time away, having more time and not having an agency. But I've started running again. And also going on like the exercise bike and going on the rower. So listening to a lot more podcasts, which is kind of weird because it's not really how I prefer to take in information, but it gives you just a new element. Like before you see a film of a book, you've got the book and you've got all the characters in your heads and you can imagine how they are. And then sometimes when you see the film of the same book, it ruins it because now you've got the casting director's version of what the characters look like. Sometimes I feel like that with books. You'll read the book and you've got the author's voice in your head, and then you hear them in real life on a podcast and you're like, oh, I didn't think they were going to sound like that. And it's different, but that's one thing that I've added in.
You're still doing your articles for Forbes, and I guess in this really lovely space of being beyond busy and really like working out what's next. So let us know, where can people find you? Where can people find your writing and everything else that you're doing?
You can find absolutely everything on jodiecook.com, which is JODIECOOK. I've started blogging every few days, so you could always sign up there. And then I'm on Twitter and Instagram as well, so feel free to say hey. Amazing. Thank you so much for being back on Beyond Busy. Thank you. This video is sponsored by Think Productive, home of the Productivity Ninja. We help people and organizations to increase their impact and make space for what matters through a range of workshops, programs, and coaching. Head to thinkproductive.com to find out more. Are you interested in booking me as a speaker for your event? You want to sign up for my Rev Up for the Week email?
you want to buy some of my books? Or do you just want to find out what I'm doing right now? It's all at grahamallcott.com/links. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share so we can make more. Thanks for watching.